is that's just something there? I mean, I was just listening. I'm like, okay, where are some of these things? Where are these? As you heard me each time, I'm like, where is it happening? Because our job is to talk about the issues of overdosing, right? So I'm like, where is it happening? You're backing me through that process at all the different points that it can, and I appreciate that because it's a learning here.
Just like in a business perspective, like the market, and like people are overdosing, people are gonna be like, oh, that's really good. So then you purposely make a batch that's really potent. That way you get more clientele, so people are wanting to buy your product more. Mm-hmm. So then you make more money, but then you can start cutting it off. Okay. And then once you do that, it's just like people it's a wave.
Yeah, it's a wave. I know. Yeah, we know
that adds to the street money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because now you're getting my clients, right? So I have to find out who you are.
Yep. Like that's always been. So you all already began talking about it, and I just want to know the level of familiarity with Narcan, and I have practiced this word for forever. Naloxone.
Naloxone. Like the generic form.
Yes.
Okay.
What would you like to know?
Well, okay, so there you go. First of all, obviously you're familiar. So that was the answer to one of my questions. But also, what should we know as it relates to its popularity or usage, openness to using it, and its role in assisting with overdose?
Okay. Well, one, price, it's ridiculous. So we were buying it before opioid became really popular, or opioid overdose or whatnot. And it was cheap. It was really cheap, affordable, you can buy a ton.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it skyrocketed
after the epidemic.
1,000%. It was $18 now per bottle.
It's like the EpiPen.
Yeah, and you're like, what? Are you kidding me?
Where did you use the money?
From pharmaceutical company. Yeah. So that was really crazy. But we still kept buying it. But yeah, so the way people would use it, it's they would see somebody overdose and they would be like, oh, the paramedic shot me with something, and we're like, oh, it's probably this.
Okay.
And they're like, oh, and so then we teach them how to use it, and then they use it in a buddy, and then they're they were really pissed off, blah blah blah, but they came back, they didn't die. And that's what we tell them. It's do you rather have somebody be mad at you, or would you rather be dealing with a dead body, or see your friend die? And they're more receptive to that than once they see, and it's word of mouth, and they see somebody use it, and it's really simple, and it's just easily accessible, through us at least.
Yeah. So there was a talk in DC sometime. I met with a group of people, and I don't remember what organization they were affiliated with, and I think their goal was to move toward a policy where police and firefighters would have Narcan to administer in case of they arrive on the scene of an overdose or suspected overdose. I don't know what happened after that. I don't think they have it. The other issue was that I had issue with. It sounded like a good idea, but it wasn't a good idea, about having, an opiate user can go to a doctor and get a prescription for Narcan, take it to the pharmacy, right? And pharmacy would charge them a fee for, albeit it may be a reduced fee, right? They have insurance, right? For Narcan. Now listen, if I'm a user and I got my last $30, if I'm going to pay, am I going to take that $30 and pay for Narcan and hold it till I get me some more money to get me another hit? And I got that monkey on my back. That monkey getting bigger and bigger every minute. Or I'm going to take that $30 and buy me some heroin, which could be potentially laced with fentanyl or the other big thing that's on its way. Right?
And that's also another thing, the doctor should be educated on what to prescribe or what type of Narcan to prescribe to a patient. Because we had somebody come in who was prescribed Narcan, but they didn't have insurance, and they were prescribed the digital Narcan, which was like $600 or $700 for one dose. And she was like, I can't afford this. Like, I have a prescription, but I can't afford this. So we were like, well, we have like the needle, like the vial and the syringe. Like, we can give you that. It's the most like cost effective at the moment. But yeah, so it's just like, why? And that, I don't know if the doctor knew or was educated on it, but it's just like, why would you prescribe something like that somebody can't afford?
Just like insulin, the vial and the syringe still continues to be the cheapest way. But we use pens and everything. Everyone wants insulin in their different way. I just work in Lilly, so I mean, so that it was interesting that you said that, because it's always the most cost effective. I mean, that's why in the hospitals they have the pharmacies and they have vials, and it's interesting.
I have a quick question. Going back to what you mentioned earlier about this kind of like generational gap, would you say that you see that when it comes to giving out the Narcan?
Yes.
So like would you say more younger people are taking it as opposed to
Yeah, definitely.
the prolonged users?
Because they tend to be more cautious, and especially since we talk to them, we're like, hey, if you like think you have a really good cut, it's like good to be prepared. You never know. And I think it's because they also lack the whole, like, I've been around for 30 years and I've never OD'd, and like I can't die even if I tried, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So it's just like, no, like that's not true.
That's the attitude.
Like, so
I try, believe me, I try to give Narcan to some people, and maybe later in the discussion you know I can tell you why, but they're in such a lot of times they're in a quick hurry to come in here and leave, man. They're on their phones. It could be whoever, they got their ride outside, or they got whoever is, I need to get back across town to go get that thing, right? I'm like, please, when I don't push it. Well, maybe next time,
Right.
we can talk about Narcan. You know, you leave that door open.
Absolutely.
But for a lot of, but thank goodness, a lot of our younger generation, when they come in for the first time, and we tell them about our services, what we offer, we offer them Narcan, they accept it, we teach them, right? Oh, it's great. Oh man, here's some cards. You have any friends that use? Tell them about us. And a lot of times they come the next time with their friends, or their friends come on their own, and that's how the word gets out.
So I was going to ask, because another part of our messaging is what level of grassroots non-traditional type approaches are required. And if you're saying, so you guys are just sharing like a card with your current client base, or are you also doing some grassroots marketing going out?
No,
We don't have to do that.
So like, I think
They
like,
know about us.
Yeah. So like the way it gets out is word of mouth, and like the way we like see clients. So it's also a medical clinic, so like it's completely confidential, and we like express that. It's like they come in, they say they're here for next, and we say people don't know you're here to see the doctor or to get needles.
Right, they don't know.
So then they come in, and it's also a nice facility, so they feel like welcome, and we like greet them with a smile and just like treat them like anybody else.
Yep.
And so they feel like comfortable. We take them to an exam room, so it's completely private. We give them like the spiel of like what we have to offer, and they're like say like it's free, and just like treat them nicely. And it's like, hey, if you have any questions, to know. So it's like if you go to your doctor's visit, and they're like, oh my god, like this is awesome. Like I'm glad you guys are here. Like, and then that's when we say like if you have any friends, like feel free to like tell them, and they do come back and they feel comfortable. They don't feel threatened. They don't feel like they're being judged or like looked down upon. Which is like I get it. Like you don't. Like that's how you lose clientele. That's how you like in the business perspective. Like that's how you lose like employees and like clients. So I guess like the whole idea is like feel comfortable, feel free to just like be yourself, but also know that you're protected. Like we tell them like everything we talk about is confidential. Like everything that happens here is confidential.
One of the things that I have for later, but while we're right here, we're talking about messaging, is when you think about those who are at the potential risk of overdosing, so users, perhaps former users, how are they getting their information? How can they be reached? Everybody has a cell phone, for example, but what are they? How would you reach them?
Media. You know how many people came here because they saw my picture in the paper? it was called the Express or something like that.
Mhm.
I was featured. I was featured in a newspaper. I spoke to somebody about Narcan, and they had my picture on the front page or in the page. No, not the front page. I don't think I'm that kind. I was inside.
Right.
I was inside.
Celebrity
somewhere.
status.
Yeah, I wasn't that famous, right?
Yeah.
And I held a vial of Narcan, right?
Mhm.
And it was a write-up about me in the paper.
Mhm.
And a couple people came in because they said bread for this city, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. And a couple of people came and said, yeah, I saw your picture in the paper. So the newspaper, they read. So
They are
they're
reading the
reading,
Express. Okay,
right?
you're right.
I think it's the Express.
Yeah, the Express on the. I've always felt that. Keep going. I'll tell you. I think
Yes.
that's good news to have.
Word of mouth. Most of our
Continuous.
clientele,
Yeah.
word of mouth. We give out those cards. Even if we didn't give out those cards, which we do, they tell their friends. And a lot of times, because if they're new, one of the questions that we ask is, "How did you hear about us?"
Absolutely.
Right?
You know, and that's our efforts are different than being a resource. We are communicating. It'd be a campaign, for example, right? So they wouldn't have a place where they could come. Well, we might be. I'm not sure if we're going to advertise a number or what we're going to do from that perspective because that's not my role. But I was just curious as to the impact of word of mouth, which I had kind of thought. I think we have later the role of word of mouth,
Mhm.
but also what media sources might be. TV, a particular.
Have TV come here. Red for the city. This is what we do. Blah blah blah. TV. We haven't made TV yet for this. Radio, right? Because for those who don't have a TV, listen to a radio. You can hear about us walking on the street. Cars parked at the stoplight, just long enough for you to hear that Narcan and Red for the city, 7th Street Northwest. You know,
Yeah.
that's we haven't gotten there yet, right? So we've gotten to the papers. We've gotten word of mouth, right? So in terms of mass media, TV and radio.
But-
It only
but-
takes how long?
But do you think they're looking at it? My position. This is just your thought.
They don't have to look. They just have to hear it, right?
Right.
You can just hear the message,
Yeah.
right? You don't have to look at what reference here looks
Yeah.
like, right? Just let me hear that. Hey, Narcan, life-saving measure for overdose, 1525 7th Street Northwest.
Mhm.
You don't need an appointment. You can just walk into the medical clinic, bam,
Okay.
right?
Also, like the internet. Because, like, I've heard a lot of people just say, I was like, how did you hear about us? Like, oh, I just Googled you guys. Or I Googled Needle Exchange. And, like, you guys came up. I was like,
So you're
okay.
out of the country.
The people are coming from out of the country for whatever visit, and they
Yeah.
come here. They come here, believe me.
So Google ads. Okay, it's there. I was just trying to get an appreciation for you guys. Hey, so I wanted to change subject real quick to the Good Samaritan law. And I also want to know how familiar you are with you both are. I see the expressions. These are things we can't, we don't have a videotape, but they have this expression on their face. Tell me your thoughts and how you would explain the Good Samaritan law. I have a copy of the thing, but I'd just rather just hear because I know who I'm speaking with now. Just how would you explain it and share your familiarity?
Sure. Can I start first?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. There is some good and some bad about the DC Good Samaritan law.
Okay.
I have made an earnest attempt to meet with the councilman that was responsible for sponsoring that law. I will say this. He agreed to meet with me. I communicated with his staff members via
Okay.
email. Great. I told him who I was and what I did, where I worked, what we do here. Sure, you can meet me on this day at this time. Okay. Good. The day before, 2 days before I'm supposed to meet with him, so-and-so will not be able to meet with you on this day at this time. Can we meet next week, this day, sure. Everybody gets busy. So the next week comes, day or two before. He can't meet with you on this day. Keep kicking the can down. And so I said, you know what? Forget it. That was my email response. Forget it.
Right.
Send. Right? Kicked me down the road like I was a can. It worked. I got frustrated. I gave up. Now, let's go back to that law. I tell our clients this. I asked, have you ever heard of the DC Good Samaritan law? Some of them have, right? Oh yeah, that's when you call to save somebody's life. You call 911, save somebody's life. That's as far as it goes. sometimes it goes a little further. Oh, and you won't get charged for in the case they die, right? It's true. Here's the part that I have to inform you that I wanted to speak with the councilman about. In that law, it has verbiage that says something like, if there is a personal use amount of heroin, you won't be charged with possession and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if there is, like who uses this much?
Yeah.
Right? Then you get charged with possession with the intent to distribute. Right? So I present the question to first the client. Call. First, I want you to understand call, because that may be you that have the overdose, right? And I asked them, now, your friend, your best friend, right, is having an overdose, you call 911, right? What are you going to do with that stuff? I don't tell them what to do with it. Like, what are you going to do with it? I'm giving them a heads up. And they tell me what they would do with it. But you stay with your friend. I say, okay, or if you do that, that's fine. Stay with your friend until 911 gets there. Here's the issue. The personal use amount. You tell me, anybody, nobody's ever able to tell me yet, what's the personal use of heroin? If I've been using for 30 years and Luis over there been using for 6 months, you would expect that my tolerance level would be much higher than Luis's. Am I correct? Right? So you tell me, what's a personal use amount of heroin? Now we go back to marijuana. Says what, 4 ounces? Anything with 4 ounces, charged with possession. But when it comes to heroin, it's individually based.
Okay.
So the answer that I got from a metropolitan, DC Metropolitan Police officer, because I go to meetings with the DC Department of Health, who fund our next program, and thankfully they invited 2 police officers to the meeting, and I presented that same question to the police officer. And the response that I got, well, it's at the discretion of the police officer. Now,
So many things.
Does the police officer actually know, is educated on
They just have
heroin
something they
use?
want to lock you
Okay.
up.
exactly.
It's more like, oh, there's drugs. That's it.
Right. So we, African American, we trust the police. We absolutely trust the police. They're going to protect us. Their jobs is to serve and protect. And I have, I'm not taking a knock at police officers. I'm just trying to point to the issue that's between the community and the police
Great,
department.
and that's going to lead me to my next question. If I did want to hear your familiarity and your thoughts about that.
Same thing, like the exact same thing. The exact same thing. But also just going back to the cops, it's like they're not all educated, and not just like in the academic sense, because you can just go out of high school and be a cop, which is like ridiculous, because then you have these people who don't really know like the basics, But then also just cops aren't educated on like various things, even though they have like lots of power and like lots of authority and deal with a lot of things. It's like you would expect that like a cop would be educated on like drug enforcement and like drug laws and like in that specific city or town or like state, because that like there would be people that would get harassed by the cops even though they were like calling for help.
Yeah.
And it's like this isn't gonna make people not want to call and be afraid, and like if I'm a cop and I put Gerald in handcuffs just because I can, even though I'm not gonna charge him with anything because it's against the law to do that. Like he's still in handcuffs and he's still like afraid, and that's something that stays with him. And then he goes and talks to his buddies just because I was trying to be like authoritative and like, which is ridiculous, or like trying to scare them into not using again, which doesn't work. It doesn't work.
So do you think the Good Samaritan law is something that DC residents and heroin users are practicing or will practice, given the things you shared and the way you've explained it?
Yes.
Some of them are.
Yes.
Some of them are. But there's still a fear.
Yeah.
There's still a fear.
Especially because like people from like metropolitan area, so like DC, like the DMV area, like come in as well, and they're like, oh, I didn't know, because like they end up using in DC, and it's like they don't know these laws. It's like, hey, like if you overdose, like call 911, like you won't be charged, like it's okay, like you're saving a life. And some of them are skeptical,
Right? They don't.
but at the same time, it's like no, like would you rather see your friend die, or do you want help? And so the way we go about doing that, so it's like with the Narcan thing, it's like we talk to them and we tell them call 911. Like you always want to make sure that you call 911 first, then you administer rescue breathing if you have to, or CPR because you want to make sure that they're breathing, and then you administer the naloxone.
Right.
But then we tell them it's like there's a good Samaritan law, like you protect it, you're fine. Only in DC, like because like we get people from Virginia, we get people from Maryland. So then it's like we're like, this is what you have to do, you'll be fine. But then we also talk about like it's like what do you do with like your stuff if you have stuff? It's like because at the end of the day, it's left to the discretion of the officer, and the officer may or may not be well educated on the specific law or just like what is personal use.
Excellent.
Virginia's tough.
Virginia's tough on everything. You know. So one of the things that you kind of began to answer earlier that I have in my discussion guide is you not only share with us some of your concerns with the perspective of fentanyl-laced heroin, but you also said you have concerns about what's coming next. When you think about fentanyl-laced heroin and Narcan, what do you think the DC, your DC residents and peers and users, what information do you believe is vital for them to have with respect to these heroin, fentanyl-laced heroin, and Narcan?
Okay. You want to start with that?
Go for it.
First is when there's help available, right? The other thing is that while you're using, we implore you to use safely. We thank you for coming to get clean needles. We always try to maintain Narcan, the life-saving drug that's the antagonistic agent for an opiate overdose. We try to keep that on hand. You're more than welcome to come in and get the Narcan. Use safely. We encourage them, or we tell them ways, one, by which someone can overdose, and things that they can do to help prevent those type of episodes from happening. The other part is, regardless of the bad portion of the DC Good Samaritan law, the important thing to do or to know is, or understand is, to call 911. Why? Because one day it may be you that's having that overdose, right? And hopefully, if it gets to the courtroom, let's hope that there is a judge that would be understanding that in spite of this individual's addiction, whatever else is going on, that person tried to save somebody's life, right? And hopefully, before it even gets to court, that both individuals will think twice about the direction that they're going.
Great. And what are your thoughts about the information that your peers, DC residents, and those who are using should have about these three things?
Basically the same thing. Just like to be more open about it and just be like, it's okay. Like because there's such a bad stigma around it, but like so many people use, and like people come in, they're like, oh, I use, but nobody knows, or nobody in my family knows. And then we have like college students, we have like parents, we have suburban housewives, we have like people we have bankers, like no, seriously, so
I know
people that you wouldn't expect, because it's not this stereotypical homeless, like they're functioning addicts, but like it's not just like a homeless person who you see who smells bad and like just looks rickety. Like no, it's like all these other people like you would never expect.
Some of our clients are conduits, which means that they get clean needles, and they go back and they have the lawyers, and they have the bankers, and they have those restaurant managers and owners that use, but they're not the ones that's coming in here. Maybe one or two may come in.
There are people before them. Yeah.
Because it's that stigma surrounding it, right? So I'm gonna get Luis. Luis is the guy that's the shovel and all this other stuff, right? Right? But you know what? Luis, you go get me my they call it works, right? You go get the works, right? And I'll hit you off with maybe drugs or money, right? And that's my payment to you to bring the needles to me.
Yeah. Keep it low.
Yeah, so basically it's just saying that it's it's not who you would suspect.
Exactly.
That type of
Because
thing.
I've had individuals that come in here, clean, cut, smell nice, dress nice, got it, started in college.
Yeah, it's like functioning alcoholics and anything else. I've been amazed what I've learned since learning about this. How do you approach working with your long-term intervention clients? How do you approach working with those you've been working with for a long period of time?
They're some of the easier.
Yeah.
It's. I don't want you to think that when we engage with our clients, it's always, albeit a lot of times it is hey, how many do you have? Blah, blah,
No,
blah.
it's case management.
Right.
I mean, we're not. So we're saying, and the question is more about how do you interact? How do we're trying to make sure as we think about messaging and awareness that we just get an appreciation for what those approaches are like and what the communications are like.
It's like going to your doctors, literally going to your doctors, your PCP. You go in and you have a talk. It's like, how's it going? Do you have needles? Yes or no? And we talk about how they're doing. Maybe they're sick or something, and we provide those services, or just how's it going? Sometimes they just want to come in and out, which is fine. But then sometimes they come and then just dump.
Yeah.
And that's when try to help them. That's where you grab them, or you try to help them go through talk things out, and then just but we also offer we have the whole conversation of this is who we are, this is what we have to offer, and if they're almost every time that they come, we're hey, if you need help, we have services, we can connect you with detox, we can connect you with so and so.
So it's a very one-to-one customized approach.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I shoot the breeze a lot of times with the long timers.
Okay.
We talk sports, we talk politics, we talk whatever while we're dumping needles in the dispensary. Because at that point, a lot of times they're not ready to quit, but you can have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So it's a whole. Go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna say it's holistic. I was gonna use the word holistic. They are still that whole person.
Exactly.
This is one piece of their wholeness.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so I just wanted to make sure we covered that a little bit. And how do you all get your information? I know you said media earlier, but how do you get your information on, for example, drug and addiction news and/or resources that are available?
Oh, great! That's a good question. That's something that I'd like to do better, and I'm going to tell you why. A lot of our clients, that Luis said earlier, they may buy and use in the district. That a lot of them buy in the district and they use in Maryland and Virginia, right? And so I would personally like for us to have resources that we can refer our clients to who are residents of Virginia and Maryland. Difficult. We know DC. Even what I don't know, we have social workers that know. They can find a mice in a haystack, right? They just know. That's something I learned about social workers since I started working, is that they are so resourceful in terms of community resources. I can drop whatever I want in their laps and they're, just call this number, go on the computer, boom, boom, boom. Now, since I've been here, I've kind of learned things from them, right? So if they're a DC resident, then it's easy. Sometimes. If they don't have ID, that's different. But I wish that there were other that we were more privy of resources available in Maryland, Northern Virginia, and in Maryland.
What about you?
Same. So